Welcome to the Encore presentation of the CEH webinar workshop hosted by the University of Fairfax. My name is David Tofano, and I work in the admissions office at the University of Fairfax. We hope you gain valuable information to help you prepare and pass your CEH exam. Now, before we get started, I want to talk briefly about the University of Fairfax. The University of Fairfax is the only 100% online graduate institution focusing solely on cybersecurity in the nation. We offer graduate certificates, master's, and doctoral programs in the field of cybersecurity and information assurance. We are currently accepting applications and awarding generous fellowships for our May 10th session. So, if you're interested in any of the programs that the university offers, please feel free to contact myself or Cynthia Walton at the contact information below. Once again, thank you for attending the Encore presentation of the CEH webinar workshop. And please let us know if we can assist you in any way.
I want to personally thank everyone for being on the call. I appreciate your time. Your time is just as valuable as my time. So there's going to be a lot crammed in this call. So buckle up. We're going to go ahead and get started. People often come to me and they, want me to help them pass exams for a variety of computer certifications. But you always have to ride the fine line of helping people pass certifications, but not necessarily disclosing anything in destroying the testing process, right? So what this webinar is a very specialized, focused webinar, basically of what happens in the classroom when you were teaching CEH as a EC Council certified instructor, combined with all of the frustrations that the students have with basically test taking. So we're going to use the format of the classroom, the virtual classroom, and basically have a little fun with test taking, right? But I want this to be test-centric, but I also want this to basically be geared towards CEH. So hopefully you'll find a nice blend between the two, okay? The major components here, CEH version 8, let's just set the stage for all of the things that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about footprinting, scanning, enumeration, system hacking. I'll let you guys read the list here. I'm just going to rattle on a little bit. You guys can feel free to connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. My name is Leo Dregier, spell it right, L-E-O-D-R-E-G-I-E-R. All right, so don't forget, L-E-O-D-R-E-G-I-E-R. Did you guys finish reading them yet? Lots of cool domains here, right? So let's pick up where we left off. Enumeration, system hacking, Trojans and backdoors, viruses and worms, sniffing, social engineering, all of the fun stuff in today's world of penetration testing. The cool part is about penetration testing is that you basically get to do this for a living, right? You use many methodologies to basically go through a series of steps and ultimately write a report and document things, right? So we don't really do anything different in the classroom. It's good to have hands-on practical knowledge of all of these areas, and so the course outlines are absolutely critical. All right, feel free to use those as a checklist of all of the different topics and terms and components and all of the things that you're going to want to write down. Okay, that's a good way to keep track of, what domain are you working from? Are you working from the SQL injection domain? Are you working from viruses and worms? Are you talking about buffer overflows and invading IDSs? Are you writing customized Python or Perl scripts on Linux? All of that is completely unlimited in the world of penetration testing. Right? The cool part about penetration testing is you get to do it all. Right? You get to be asked any question under the sun, and you get to figure out how to basically evaluate computers and computer networks, ultimately to document that experience and write a report and write recommendations on those reports. These are just some of the different areas in which basically we end up doing every single day. All right? So this is the context of the typical CEH course. Most people are in my class for like DoD 8570 compliance and things like that. So you really should be familiar with all of the basic domains. You can use this as a checklist as you go through. Okay? But hey, what's new in the Certified Ethical Hacker version 8? Right? What's all the latest and greatest stuff? Well, the cool part is we've started doing a lab list of basically, how to basically do this, because there's the EC Council official guide, which is absolutely great, but it's what we end up using in the classroom, especially if you're testing very, very soon from the end of your class, or maybe even on the last day of your class. If you're taking a test, you don't have time to digest that whole material, so you can end up using that at work or on the job or at home in your home lab. But during that 5-day, hey, we got to cram for an exam. In addition to all of this stuff, where do we focus our time? So the lab list is a customized set of labs to reinforce concepts, knowledge areas, skills that you actually might need to perform, doing things hands-on, basically documented in a very constructive way, right? The software repository on CEH version 8 is updated slightly. Too many changes realistically to discuss here and now. If you still have the version 7 toolkit, that's still absolutely adequate. There's a few, custom tools here and there that are absolutely worth having. Mostly now things are done using the Kali operating system. This is the backtrack replacement. Hopefully most of you are familiar with it at this point. You can really replace your Windows desktop penetration system with basically a virtualized Kali, or running Kali on top of your virtualized Windows. You can just add it in as you need it, do what scans you need, run it all in the virtualized environment. And it's a great way to keep up with all of the latest and greatest ethical hacking style tools. I can speak from the point of view of a licensed penetration tester in that sense. So I want to keep my color current scheme. You got to forgive Windows. Also, streamline class notes. These are the quick and dirty notes that we basically use to facilitate the classes. These get us from lab to lab and from exercise to exercise. But really what they serve the purpose for is a 50,000-foot view of basically the course. So they also make a nice study guide as well. Also, per module mind maps, each one of the areas or CEH domains, each one of these we've created a mind map, so that way you can visually go through each of the sections and what tools do you focus on in the Kali operating system or on the Windows operating system, right? So we have to keep track of all of that. So the mind maps help us kind of relate all the material together. Some of you may have seen some of my mind maps. They get pretty crazy, but we try to keep them just individualized and very specific just to that domain now. Also, there's a new OSI model cheat sheet, right? This cheat sheet is basically the problems that the students have is that for some reason they just don't remember their OSI model. And I'm sure some of you right now are thinking, oh yeah, that thing. Well, you got to know it. Being a penetration tester or someone who inspects firewalls or intrusion detection rules, or anybody in the networking world in general, for anybody that's writing firewall rules or proxying or SSL accelerators or anything like that, they're going to need to know how all the networks fit together, right? So they have to dissect the OSI models, and they get pretty fluent, with layers 2, 3, and 4, and we'll cover that stuff later. But they have to know it inside and out. One of the main problems is with the OSI models, people get stuck at one particular layer, like you're just at the networking layer, or that's your role maybe that you do for a living, or maybe you're stuck at the application layer. Maybe you just do web application programming. Maybe some of you are doing just database stuff, or you have different experiences that you can relate to there. So you get stuck just doing one thing. But being an expert in penetration testing, it's really about mastery, and specifically the OSI model is basically our canvas to master. So that's realistically a good way to explore, because we're always looking for exceptions to ports and protocols and as things move from source to destination. Also, one of the main differences here is over the evolution of the courses, right? Some of us have been dealing with the CEH program since like version 3, right? So you get to see the versions change, version 3 to version 6, version 7, version 8. Where's the material going? What have we learned in the classroom? And realistically, we've learned to automate things quite handily with some of the Google hacking commands. All right, so don't forget OSI model mastery. That's going to help you guys a lot. Also, sniffing and protocol mastery would also fit into that, right? So we, a good way to remember all of the Nmap commands is to go ahead and create a spreadsheet, which we already have. Create a spreadsheet of, is it coming, is it going, is it source, this is the destination, what's the command line option, if the port's open or closed, what are the results. Those are common types of scenarios that we're always trying to find the ins and outs of. I always speak to that, the Nmap commands, like if you are jet skiing or just skiing behind a boat, right? Sometimes you can go across the wakes and you can weave in and out between the waves. Well, when you explore Nmap and tools like HPing 2 and 3, you basically are exploring between the wakes and understanding just exactly how these operating systems tweak to basically identify their behavior. Also, strong reliance on some of the frameworks, right? So obviously the CEH framework is a great framework to start out with. There are other frameworks like the open sourcing system testing methodology manuals if you're looking for more of it doesn't tell you how to do things, it tells you what to do. Right? So it'll say, go check this, go check that, go check this, go check that. Doesn't say how to do it, just tells you what to do. That's the benefit of like the OSSTMNs. And then, of course, point-and-click exploits, right? But point-and-click exploits are just theory. Without the theory, they're no good. So you have to understand what you're doing. So as we go through these materials and these domains, I really want you to think about the theory that goes in behind this stuff and how we kind of ride the wave going from left to right, from topic to topic, and interleaving all of the OSI model components inside and out. All right. Since the last call, we've done a little compilation of what worked, what didn't work, things like that. You guys really like the informativeness, all right? It's kind of like bringing Leo on a stage, right? Basically, right to your living room, or right to your car, or right to your office, so we can still communicate it fairly effectively, all right? So that was good, right? You're starting to build a rapport. Some of you may have seen some of my webinars before, or actually had me in class. Actually, I know a few of you have had me in class. Also, there's been really, really good participation with the University of Fairfax in actually hosting these webinars. I mean, I basically told them the last one that I was doing was the last one, and they were going to have to beg me to do another one, and, here we are again. So, my thank you to the University of Fairfax for inviting me out. But this has been a great experience. But the bad things, I moved through things way too quickly. Well, hey, look, if you need reruns of this stuff, you can always contact the university. We'll be happy to get you set up. That's just part of the process in which we help you out. How can we help you out? But the opportunity was for more practice test questions. But without practice test questions, you've really got to go, wait a second, what's the problem? All right? What's the problem statement? Think about that for a second, folks. If you guys are in your car or in your office or wherever you are right now, what I want you to do is I basically want you to go find a place to hide. All right? So it's just going to be you and me here for a little while here. So you're really going to want to embrace everything I have to say here so you can just get it in one solid, hour and a half, if you will, So go find quiet time. So I know some of you are multitasking at the moment, playing with the radio, doing the same thing. I'm on the phone. Maybe at work you're still sending emails. Cut it out. This is where I got to tell you guys have to start paying attention. Also, it's been a couple minutes since I've been on the call, so all of the people that are late dialing in, they've just now figured out that we're actually on a call. So welcome. My name is Leo Dregier. We're going to be doing a CEH webinar, test taking prep clinic, all right, using the format of the actual lab experiences that we do in the classroom, and basically kind of using that, navigating that through different test questions, and coming up and fixing some of the test-taking problems that you, the student, typically encounter, okay? But now let's go to the root of the question. Why do people fail exams? Okay? Often in my class, nearly every single one, I love doing the survey just because it works in my favor almost unanimously. I always ask, how many of you have ever taken a course on test taking, test prep, or strategies? You know, like an SAT prep, but I would actually count that. Typically, 90% of the people have not, okay? So what happens in the industry, okay, is people go, well, shoot, I'm just a bad test taker. I'm not really that good. Okay, so let me go find a brain dump and let me try to brain dump my way through things. This is a bad idea, okay, simply because you can have so much fun actually learning the tools. You can be in class, networking with people, building your career. This is supposed to be the fun stuff. You're not supposed to be doing this by yourself. A lot of you are what I call closet studiers, okay? You like to get by yourself, you know, and organize your little notepads and your paper and your pencil, and then get everything all set up to study, and then take a break. All right? I know how you guys operate in the closet world. All right? I'm a recovering closet bad taking test taker myself. Right? Part of the reason I teach test taking is because I was a horrible test taker myself. Right? So I can relate to all of these frustrations, but I'm here to show you the tips and the tricks of test taking, and basically how someone with disabilities can, you know, basically use this to their advantage. And one of the first things I want to talk about is the context versus the content of the question. This is absolutely critical just within the subject of test taking in itself. There's two, write this down if you want. There's two ways that you can analyze a test question. What content did they put in front of you, or how should I look at that content? Okay? Let me give you an example. If you get asked a test question like, you know, how many bit encryption is DES? Well, that's a content-driven test question. You either know it or you don't. Okay? So when it comes to do you know it or do you don't, the best way, the absolute best way to learn that, and by the way, the fastest way, for those of you that want the fast track, is to actually do it with a hands-on exercise. And I know you're thinking, oh man, that's the last thing I wanted to do. I didn't want to do a hands-on exercise. I would just wanted to learn. But if you do it hands-on, you'll remember doing it. That's the cool part about it. So it's the hands-on, being able to make a difference in the industry and actually use these tools in which you master the content, all right, the subject matter. The next is context. Context is, how do I look at this question? Okay, do I look at this? I often talk about the PALTO model. PALTO stands for Physical, Administrative, Logical, Technical, and Operational. I'll use it again and again, so if you're trying to scramble and write it down, all right, it's not that hard. Physical, Administrative, Logical, Technical, and Operational. Do I look at the test question from the physical point of view, right? Is this physically oriented? Is this administratively oriented, right? Are they asking me about policy, standards, procedures, and guidelines online? Are they asking me about logical and technical, which is really the same thing, like encryption and decryption, right? That's technical, and logical, and virtual even. Or operational. Operational is more process-driven, like an incident response process. In your career, you're going to have to master several processes. I'm just happy to be the lucky one that loves incident response. Okay, so incident response. That's a process. Project management or change management is a process as well. Just like ethical hacking is a life cycle. All right, so those are typically operationally driven. Also, don't forget, people fail the exam because they don't use the course outlines as a simple checklist of adequacy of do you know the subject or do you not. Okay? In most cases, you can find the checklist or the outline somewhere. Most certifications I know have them published on their website, right? So use that checklist as subject matter. Do your homework. Do your due diligence. Practice due care. Go look at the stuff. Print it out. Checklist it off. Okay? Use that as a guide. How far have I got through the CEH course? Good advice. I want to point out something. This is everything in the last 15 years bundled into one. Okay? This is the core of my existence. It's the cone of learning. It's a learning model by Edgar Dale in 1969. Right? And what he found out is how much are you going to remember after 2 weeks, okay? Giving a particular learning activity. So are you reading? He found out that you only remember 10% of what you read after 2 weeks. You only remember 20% of what you hear, 30% of what you see, and 50% of what you hear and see. If you start combining these, you get up to 50. Nonetheless, that's all passive, okay? Those are all passive activities like watching a movie, seeing pictures, hearing the instructor's words, reading the actual book. What kills me, right, kills my inner child, is every single time somebody wants to learn a new subject, what's the first thing that they do? I need to go get a book. Well, why? You're only going to remember 10% of it after 2 weeks. So that's the last thing that you should be doing. You should be reading and using the books as a last-minute walkthrough right before the exam, because you're only going to remember it in that sense. I'm not saying try to read the whole book. I'm saying most books are dictionaries, and you can look things up and reference things. There's lots of great authors on a lot of great subjects, some of them that I've worked with. All right? But passive is not good enough. I like to do things actively. All right? That means we participate when we do things. If you do it, if you simulate the real-world experience, then basically you're riding the bike at that point. All right? And if you guys say these things, you give the talk, you participate in discussion, you demonstrate mastery. Most students like to play the silent in the closet game. Come on out, participate with the group. Okay? Come on in, the water's fine. We're going to be just fine here. All right, so this is what's going on. Best practices. I'm going to give you some that you can use today. All right. If you're a horrible test taker, if you've never taken a test taking class, okay, you can use some of these skills today and clean up your bad habits. All right. First thing, you read your answers first. It's that simple, folks. This is why you guys are doing horrible test taking. You guys are reading the question first. And I know what you're thinking. Leo, I read the directions. The directions told me to read the question and select the best answer. Wrong. All right? Not a good idea. You read answers first. If you're given a multiple choice, hopefully it's not fill in the blank, right? If you're given a multiple choice, you've got 4 options. You need to know what your 4 options are. What is door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, door number 4 before you walk through them. Okay, you don't get the pleasure of knowing the backstory. The backstory is in the question. That's what you go read to validate, option A, option B, option C, or option D. If I say go through 4 doors, which one do you want? A, B, C, D, right? When you say, well, what's behind them? Well, the same thing. That's why you look at your answers first, folks. Okay? You don't want to read blindly through the question. Reading blindly through the question is a technical term that I think we call dumb. All right? Don't do that. Write that down, right? I read the question. That was dumb. No more. Good test takers, we don't read test questions first. We read them last. All right? We only do it to validate that we've actually chosen the correct answer. Right? Because why read it if we can get the correct answer? Or wouldn't you like to get the correct answer to questions without reading the question? I mean, I would. I think that's great. I don't read for the sake of reading. All right? Another thing, how are test questions constructed? Okay, this is very critical. Most test questions have an introduction. They're built just like essays. Okay, so follow me here with the essay analogy. They're built like test questions or essays. They have an introduction, 3 supporting paragraphs, or 3 sets of information, and a conclusion. Most of us start top to bottom, left to right. Go to the conclusion first, where they simply ask you, what's the test? What's this? This is where they tie in all of the materials and actually ask the question. So you read your answers first, then go right to the conclusion portion of the question. especially if they have pictures. And don't freak out, they got pictures. You're probably going to have to figure them out, a screenshot of something, put something in order, something like that, some sort of activity for you, the test taker, to actually, move the pegs and the circles around. That's basically what those types of test questions are for. I want to show you, though, the absolute magic and why you should be paying very, very close attention. We're going to cover test questions for some of you that are like, can you please get to the test question? I promise I'm going to get to test questions. All right? Statistically, though, I want to validate my approach. If you read the question and then select the best answer, what you're doing is you're starting at a 0% and you have to work your way all the way up to a passing score or a 70% on average. My approach of read the answers first or then the question, I'm also doing something else while I'm doing that. As soon as I see my answers, I eliminate 2 that I think are going to be wrong. Okay? What 2 have nothing to do with the other 2? Okay? That's a 50-50 on a set of questions or answers. That's good, right? If you do a 50-50, well, you just changed your odds statistically. All right? Now you're flipping a coin, right? So you're 50% one side, 50% the other. All right, so I'm using statistics to actually put the odds in my favor just because of the context, the way that I look at my answers. Are my answers A and B versus C and D, or A and D versus B and C? Okay, I group them, and the common grouping patterns are a 3 and 1 grouping or 2 and 2. All right, so 2 answers in one category, other 2 answers in another category. This is how test takers write test questions. I've written thousands of test questions over my life, and it always starts with, well, what do I have to achieve here? In this case, for you guys, the benefit is the test question is written to the hands-on that we've done actually in the classroom, and then what is the related material. Okay, but I'm going to start at 100%, and I'm going to try not to lose and go less than 70. That's a much smaller spread. Right? If you 50-50 on the other 2, that's where odds go in your 50 favor. So here are some of the rules to basically any information assurance test. You can use them. What they call rules or best practices, right? One simple thing that people forget all the time is that there is an IAC triad. Now, typically, nobody will tell you. Everybody will tell you that there is an IAC triad. But what nobody tells you is that you can use that as a thinking tool. Let's think of the context of the question in terms of integrity versus confidentiality versus availability. Right? And you can separate and you can find different grouping patterns. Also is something what I call divide and conquer. This is a little bit more complex, but it's basically different grouping patterns that are strategically placed. And by eliminating 2, or think of it like left and right and top and bottom, like a big cross, right? If I could eliminate the top 2, right, well, that helps me in the statistics of actually getting through the test question to put the odds in my favor. Same thing with the 3 and 1 grouping. If I can identify the single answer as the absolute correct answer because the other 3 are wrong, well, then that's great. Right? But I have to look at the test question from context in order to go, 3 of these are not like the other. Right? And I have to sit there and stare at the test question and battle it out in my head. 3 of these are not like the other. Right? So when I write test questions, I think, okay, let's give them, 2 test questions from, let's say, scanning domain, and 2 options from, let's say, hacking domain. Right? And then see if you guys are even figure out the difference in what tools did we use when and what's part of the life cycles. And just see if anybody picks up on that. That's what you can do when you do hands-on. Also, you can insert answers into the question. This is a very important strategy because you start by reading the answer and then you finish by reading the question, and generally the correct answer makes one complete true statement. Because that's, as a test taker, I say, the duck is red. All right. Well, then I, try to come up with different options of, the duck is purple or blue, and change the color. Or maybe it's not a duck. Maybe it's a cow. Maybe it's a horse. Maybe it's a cat. I can change different variables in the test question to basically try to fool the test taker. Okay, this whole field, there's actually a field on this called psychometrics. It's measuring how the brain thinks, and that's the cool part of having an ANSI accreditation, as EC Council has sought, is that they go to seek that higher standard, right? You have to measure things out to much greater detail as you increase the standard, right? So it's purely a benefit. Also, within the question, what are the key words, right? Sometimes it's words like confidentiality, disclosure, privacy, secrecy, maybe all of your symmetric algorithms, maybe all your asymmetric algorithms. Maybe I can group all of that in one category. Maybe it's let's take the point of view of integrity. Maybe it's words like change, modify, alter, add, subtract, delete, authorize, non-repudiate, the word integrity, MD5 sum, SHA, Tiger, Whirlpool, Have-Haul. All right, different algorithms. All right, so I can group all of that together just by walking myself through an integrity-based conversation, as I just did, right? So I just look at the world from integrity. Just look at the world, from confidentiality. Just look at the world from an availability point of view. Very matrix-oriented, I know, but, that's what goes on in my head. Also, when it comes to test taking, what test takers fail to do is they actually fail to choose what's my percent confidence in my answer statistically. If you threw 2 answers out, well, you're at a 50%. If you threw 2 answers out and you're really sure about one of the remaining 2, well, that's probably a 75% confidence. If you 100%, you got this one. Don't ever go back to that question again because, well, you're wasting your time. There's nothing that you're going to change unless another question can offer insight or value to the question at hand. Sometimes I ask myself, well, what domains are the test questions from? That's a great test-taking technique that works from the student's point of view and from the instructor's point of view when, asking questions in a class, right? Just ask, one domain from another and see how they relate and watch the student's head. Well, think about that, watch the wheels turn. Also, absolutely critically, do not forget, you look for wrong answers. You do not like right answers. Remember what the directions were. Read the question, select the best answer. Okay? That's bad advice. We like to read the answers and find out what we need within the question. So it's the exact opposite. So it's inversed to make it good. And that's why it's great advice as opposed to read the question, select the best answer. I know some of you read the directions. Well, it said, read the question. So I read every single one of them. Did that help you get any points? No. All right? So you need to figure out what's important. Where are the points at? Right? So from a test writer's point of view, right, how can I trick you? Is it 2 and 2? Is it 3 and 1? That's just simple ways to write test questions. Rules. Do not review answers that you have 100% confidence in. You're not going to change them. Therefore, you're wasting your time. If you know something is correct, well, don't go back to it. But you're asking, Leo, how do you know which one's correct? Well, you're going to keep a log of all of the test questions that you would take. For example, on any test, I have some 40-odd certifications myself, and still to this day, for every single test that I take, if it's a 100-question test, I write down 1 through 100, and I basically track my percent confidence, what's the domain from, and I use the reconnaissance to kind of help me get the context to think, well, how do I realistically want to spend my time evaluating this test question? So can other questions offer insight or values to the question at hand? Also, what people fail to do is write down what you've memorized if you are going to cram, if you are going to use lab lists or mind maps or cheat sheets or study guides. Notice I did not say brain dumps, okay? There's no value to your career by trying to brain dump your way out of anything, right? No exam I've ever taken. Is it worth it? All right, don't look for the in-depth answer. Look for the general answer. Sometimes you look for the general answer, or sometimes you look for the in-depth answer. Sometimes you look for the shallow answer. Sometimes you look for the very, very technical specific answer. The rule of thumb with that is administrative versus technical. Administrative things are typically very, very general and wide. Technical things are very, very technical, deep, and specific, right? What is the command line switch for, how to guess an operating system using the Nmap command, right? Something that's been, or how do you use a TCP scan using Nmap, right? You would have to map that out. What does the command line look? And it's Nmap tag lowercase s capital T. All right, or what's the proper syntax for a port? Can you just do tag P, no space, and then the port number, or do you need that space in there? Okay, so sometimes it's absolute, one character off syntax. Other times it's not. Sometimes it's just a policy versus a procedure. Okay, is it a policy, a standard, a guideline, or a procedure? Because I don't really know. All right, it's that type of stuff. Also, write on your exam. Most people only read the question, select the best answer, and they don't take any notes on any sort of paper exam. They think they can do it all in their head. You get no credit for doing it all in your head or crafting a Picasso during the testing experience. So you write down the OSI model, write down anything that you think that you absolutely need to know. You're going to have a last-minute to-do list. Go ahead and write it down. Just keep writing it down. And by the way, writing it down is doing, so in the code of learning, I give that a thumbs up. Also, is CEH specifically 150 graded, multiplied by approximately 70%. People think that means 105 correct, but don't forget that, exams are graded on a scale, and I never really worry about how many I have to actually get correct or not get correct, or I'm not even saying 105 is even the correct answer, or it should be 70%, maybe it's 90%. I think that all students should get 100%, okay, to proficiency. It's like I treat this stuff like it's hazardous material. If I got something wrong, wouldn't I like to know exactly what I got wrong? Because I don't want somebody to end up hurt or injured, right? I take the same approach to this thing. So I think everybody should get 100%. Most test takers don't do care to actually just get to that mastery level. They're fine with 70, and if you just want to pass, pass. That's up to you in your career. But then again, if you want mastery, understanding, if you're actually, deeply connected or intimately connected to your career, to penetration testing or ethical hacking, well, then, it's a different conversation altogether. Another thing that you can do from test questions that you're going to see here as we go through the test questions, folks, are coming right up. All right? So one of the things I want you guys to practice is remove the noise. Right? If there's something irrelevant in a test question, remove it. Right? And some of my test questions, I simply just ask you a question and throw you some noise. Right? You got to remove it. That's part of the game that we're going to play here. Also, a wise person once said, don't do math in your head. Who knows what happens when you do math in your head? That's right. You make mistakes. Again, write things down. Typically, in any testing experience, you can have paper and pencil. Write stuff down. And here's a magical test-taking tip that works, just phenomenal in certain exams. Ones that use true and false options is anytime you have multiple choice that's actually a true and false, that's basically you can turn the multiple choice into the true or false. All right? Because you can just evaluate each answer as true and false statements. All right? That's how I compensate for, well, wait a second, let me figure out, if there's double negative, I need to figure it out and I need to know, right? If it says which the following is not, or all of these except, if that's what if those are the language that the test taker, the test writer is using, all of the following except, choose one, choose four, things like that. Use those, as statistics for, how can I manipulate the question? Look for patterns. Right? It's just general test-taking principles, but you get to practice it coming right up, all in the context of CEH and hands-on labs. All right? So let's try it out. Simply stated, what is hacktivism? Right? Is it hacking for a cause, hacking to destroy your enemy, or an association which groups activists, or none of the above? So here's what I want you to look at, a question like this. Notice your answers. Now, notice when I started out, I actually read the question and read the answers first. That was the only one that we'll do this way. Now, I'm just joking. We'll probably do a couple. But let's try it in reverse. All right, so we look at answers A, B, C. Hacking for a cause, destroy your enemy. Well, destroy your enemy. That seems a little harsh. So maybe not I'm out to destroy you. Right? Maybe that's not happening here. Maybe it's not that type of association. An association which groups activists. An association that groups activists. Does that make any sense? What could they be talking about? Oh, okay, but the answer D is none of the above. That's right, Leo said something about that. That's a 3-in-1 grouping. This is a perfect 3-in-1 grouping question, right? I have three things, and in this case, answer D, none of the above. Do you think that is the absolute correct answer or the absolute wrong answer? You have to quantify that answer D first, whether you like this question or not. I know some of you have already answered it. Humor me through the exercise here, okay? Hacking for cause, destroying your enemy, and our association which groups activists. Well, hacktivism, it's actually hacking for a cause. All right? All right. What is a suicide hacker? Someone that wants to hack their own life. Kind of reminds me of the Matrix. Someone who's willing to go to jail for their cause. A hacker who's depressed. Or all of the one. Hey, wait a second. That's the same pattern. A 3-in-1 grouping. Right? Follow me here? So that means all of the above. Well, it can't be all of them, can it? Suicide? No, they're three different things, so how can it all three separate things be the same? Maybe it's not all of the above. And we start eliminating answers. This is what goes on in my head when I teach test taking, right? You have to go through the exercise, and eventually the exercise just becomes riding a bike. So is it a hacker who's depressed? Probably not. Is it somebody? How can you hack your own life? I mean, maybe there's a new iPod or something like that. You know, there's shirts now that they actually generate their own energy. You can charge your iPad or your phablet while you jog. It's someone who goes to jail and hacks for a cause. Right? What does non-repudiation mean? Okay. Well, this one we're going to look at our answer. The reason why I did the question first is because it was really so short. Well, let's start with our answers. In this case, we'll go from the bottom up. Something about, I see clean at the bottom. Okay, so to clean all of your tracks, to provide message integrity. So does that integrity have to do anything with cleaning your tracks? Encrypting email. Or the ability to authoritatively sign and no longer deny sending a message. Okay, well, maybe you just know this one. Maybe you can actually just answer this one from a content point of view. You just know the answer right off the bat, right? But if not, start eliminating two. Let's look at the same test question, and now I just want you to go through an exercise. If you had to pick two and throw them out, which two would you pick out? You know, if this was a lineup and I said remove two, which one? Because statistically, if I throw those two out and the correct answers are still possible, well, all of your points are still on the board, but you just eliminated wrong stuff, so you keep on to that 100% that much longer. Okay? It's the ability to authoritatively digitally sign something and no longer send a message. How does tracer or traceroute work? How can we look at the answers? I see TTLs, UDP, TCP, and IP addresses. What can we use? Is anybody thinking, you know what, maybe we can use the OSI model here, right? What layer of the OSI model does a time to live parameter work at? What layer of the OSI model does UDP work at versus TCP? And since TCP and UDP are inverse and opposite, maybe, well, it can't be. This is a trick because since UDP and TCP are opposites, well, can it be one or the other? Or maybe it's not both because it can't be in that same category. That's right, UDP, TCP, that's layer 4. Tracer, we ping, it uses ICMP. ICMP has a time to live. So maybe I can think time to live at layer 3 of the OSI model versus layer 4 of the OSI model, UDP and TCP. Maybe I can group these answers differently. Maybe I can do both A and D, or the first one and the last one, is time to live versus IP addresses. Notice, by the way, I don't have A, B, C, and D here, okay? It's a lot harder for you to get the pattern of things, okay, when you have A, B, C, and D. You have to visually kind of block that out. So they're specifically bullet points. I look at these as choices. What are my choices? How many doors do I have? Do I have 2 doors? Do I have 4 doors? Do I have 8 doors, 16 doors? All right, you'll see how that'll change later in my examples. Well, in this test question specifically, you can use layer 3 and layer 4, IPs and TTLs, layer 3. So you get to choose alpha or delta versus Bravo and Charlie. Bravo and Charlie are actually TCP and UDP, they're layer 4. If you threw those two out, you got free points at this point. The better answer here is a time to live parameter. Okay. Name 2 footprinting tools. All right, if we were in class doing a bunch of labs, all right, name 2 footprinting tools. As a matter of fact, I could come up with 1,000 test questions like this. Name 2 footprinting tools, name 2 scanning tools, name 2 buffer overflow tools, name 2 cross-site scripting tools, 2 wireless tools, 2 layer 2 tools, 2 layer 3 tools, right? You see how I can twist that around, okay? So what do I have here? What are my choices? How can I separate these into categories? I got NS lookup. Well, we know that's related to DNS or an application. Tracer, that's also an operating system or a network. But loft crack and web crack, oh, they both ended crack. All right? Well, good thing I'm not smoking the crack. So maybe some of you at this point are thinking that's what's going on because of test taking. But no, trust me on this. Follow the lead here. You actually might pick up a test taking tip or trick. Okay? I'm walking you through all of the common mistakes that people make, and I'm forcing you down a particular path. Eventually, you'll get to the point where you'll just be able to answer the test questions, and you'll get next, 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 all correct. Okay? NS lookup and tracer. Can we group those together? Everybody agree? How about loft crack versus web crack? Can we group those together because of the word crack? Well, if you do a 50-50 on this test question, well, throw 2 out. Well, name 2 footprinting tools. Hey, convenient. I'm left with alpha and Bravo as the correct answer. What does the ls-d command do combined with set type equals any when using an interactive NS lookup? Wow, okay, so that was the DNS lab, right? We were doing the DNS. They were saying something about that DNS thing as a server, as an application. We could look it up. Oh, this is right. So set type any. Let's take the elephant apart one step at a time. Set type any. That's when we actually can choose what the type of the record is on the actual name server. So MX records, startup authority records, host records. That's right. That's what was going on. So we just want to look for, in this case, anything. But ls. ls is a Linux command, right? Typically can't use that one on Windows without a bunch of headaches. Joke. So it's ls. What does that actually do? So it's listing something with DNS. Okay, well, let's try it. All right, so what do you guys think it is? Can you eliminate 2? Can you eliminate 3? Well, I have list the contents of a file there because that's the trick you, well, ls tac d. All right. I have set type equals any, so delete the DNS request. D for delete, so I take you down that path. Forward request, does this have anything to do with forwarding? Well, I remember DNS forwards to other DNS servers, but I don't see anything forwarding here. Or attempts to do a domain transfer. So if the server is an application and it has records, and I'm doing a list of records of that server, and I find out what those records are because they're disclosed to me because it violates confidentiality and I shouldn't see them, oh, maybe I could actually just transfer all the domain records. Oh, yeah, let's go with that one. All right? You see how that works, folks? All right, so here you go. Try it again. Just stop reading the question. Look at your answers. Zone transfer, well, for lookup, for forward records on a root server, or to ping the source IP address. Why would I want to ping my source IP address? Why would I want to forward records to a root server? This question does have a DNS field. All right, so the question is asking about DNS, and specifically very, very technical administrative knowledge here. I'm sorry, technical knowledge. TCP, layer 4 of the OSI model, application layer, port 53, identified. All right. Well, TCP, that's connection, so that something important must be going on here because you only use TCP when you need the overhead reliability guarantee that it's actually going to get there. So maybe it's a zone transfer. I think that's pretty important. I doubt it have to do with forwarding requests because we know that those use UDP. Could it be a lookup? No, UDP lookups. And you know what? IP, now I'm thinking about this IP answer, ping your source address. What's that got to do with DNS? That's probably the bogus, absolutely wrong answer. So I might look at the answers to this now as a 3 and 1. Keep A, B, and C, throw out D. I've just now, if I throw a dart now, I've got at least a 33% chance up from a 25 if I just guess. All right, final answer, zone transfer. All right. Hang on just 1 second. All right, let's try another one. So what does the following command do? All right. In this case, file type PDF in the URL leodregier.com. Okay. What does the following command do? File type PDF URL leodregier.com. All right. Well, is that determining the file type of the server of leodregier.com? Is it only used for Linux and Windows? Okay, well, Linux and why is it one versus the other? Linux, Windows, maybe I can group those answers together. Looks within a particular domain for a specific file type? Well, looking for PDFs in the domain name. Yeah, I think that one's relatively easy. Let's look for a particular domain, file type within that particular domain. All right, so final answer. Last one. What is an ICMP code 3 type 13 for? All right, so let's see if there's anything we can figure out here. It's used for destination unreachable. Okay, so I know ICMP, that's layer 3 of the OSI model. And there was types and codes, which are all these different messages. And now you're thinking, oh man, which message was which? Right? Well, this is where actually having detailed specific content or knowledge can actually help. Some of us may go to Wikipedia and actually look up, hey, what's ICMP do? And actually look at the codes in the type chart and go over and review a few of them. All right, it's an easy way to chart out every single one of them. Used for destination reachable, host unreachable. So I got host versus a network. Does that have anything? So those are at least related. Does that have anything to do with use for a source host isolation? Or does it mean that the communication is administratively prohibited? Well, I remember that the types and the codes, the lower it was, the closer it was to the operating system. I don't remember what was at the end of the list. So if I just had to guess and go, well, what if the list just happens to be ordered? If I start at host and move my way out, could I order my answers? It's asking for a 13, so maybe 13's later on down in the list, simply because of, starting at a host, then the network, and then reaching out. Well, if you actually know the content in this, a type 13, code 3 type 13 is actually administratively prohibited. You really could have used ordering to realistically just guess to lean you closer to C and D, or actually closer to D than the previous answers. And the reason why is because both the first answer and the third answer have the word host in them. So if I had to order the list, types and code, host, the networks, and then outside of that, all of the exceptional reasons in the list, well, there you go. You get to the exception administratively prohibited simply by ordering the TCP type 13 list. Just happens to work out in that favor. You can't always pull that out of that rabbit out of the hat, but it's possible. If you had to guess, it's a great strategy. If that was the only strategy that I had, in this case, I was still able to guess the correct answer. That's the way that would work. All right. What is a most? Whoop, lost my place in my slides. What is the most reliable TCP scan? All right. Most reliable TCP scan. Is it half open, UDP, acknowledgement, TCP full connect, or a zombie? Well, I need the word reliable. Let's use reliable as the key word in the test question. So if there's only half of something, that's probably not going to be reliable. UDP, that's connectionless, so why wouldn't you use TCP? What's TCP have to do with UDP? Maybe that's just there for noise. Acknowledgement scan, I remember those scans were the additional scans that you start doing later on after you've exhausted all of the other ones. Specifically, ACT scans, I think we use that for a firewall. Something with a firewall, I just can't remember. Full connect, okay, I know you think, Leo, get it. Right, so hopefully you derive at TCP a full TCP connect scan right away. Right? If you find port 389 on a server, what does that mean? All right, a domain controller, it's a web server, a proxy server, or a database. Well, those are different components, domain controller, web, proxy. All right, so 389. If you just knew the content here, the answer is jumping off of the page. But if you don't have content, maybe you can use context to actually work your way through this. Web servers, well, they typically use port 80, right? So that's not 389, that's out. Proxy server, oh yeah, I saw that one time. My web browser proxy settings were set to 8080. Proxy means to act on behalf of, so let's throw that one out too. Database. Database or a domain controller. Well, actually here, just by doing that, you've got yourself down to a 50-50. Okay, you can look at two answers versus the other two answers. In this case, I'm statistically flipped a coin. Right? I could guess database, I could guess domain controller if I don't know, but at least I'm real close to the correct answer. All right, in this case, LDAP, port 389, has to deal with typically Active Directory, not limited to, but typically Active Directory, and that's typically for the domain controller component of it. Okay. Final answer, alpha. So what is the benefit of a zombie scan? Well, no benefit. Waste of time. We don't have time to do it in class. Oh, well, you should have been in my class. If you were in my class, you could do a zombie scan. I'll show you how to do one. You need an idle computer, and you're just going to bounce all of the traffic off of the idle standalone computer to another computer, and then basically monitor the zombie to see what changed on it. Depending on what changed on it, that tells you what the zombie did to the target that you never touched. It's kind of fun because you get to annoy a host without actually ever touching it. It's kind of like being in the dark and poking somebody. All right? Final answer, what do you think it is? In this case, it allows you to find information about your target without touching it. You can use a Christmas scan on Windows. Well, Christmas. So I remember that was one of the extra scans that was in there. Not necessarily popular. We didn't spend that much time on it in class. Yeah. So we know we can do TCP, UDP, and then there's all those extra ones. I remember that the command line was a TAC S capital X. That doesn't really help me here, though. But I know that Windows is really, really picky. So you can use it on Windows. I'm going to go with final answer, false. All right. It's much easier to use Christmas scans on network appliances or Linux-based operating systems because of the way that they behave. On Windows, they're very, very strict in terms of allowing you the interaction with the ports. In the open source world, you have a lot more flexibility. All right, switching subjects a little bit. What is the default relative identifier in a SID-RID combination for the admin account? This is classic stuff. I highly recommend that you go into a security account manager file, look at the SID-RID combination, or use something like user to SID, SID to user, or any SID, get SID extracting tool. There are about a dozen of them. All right, but what do you think? Look at the answers. I want you to think about the answers. I got 1,580. And stop looking, guys, you have to stop looking for the correct answer if you know it. Start eliminating answers that you don't know. 80-80. Well, we just talked about that in the proxy question. So you should have thrown that answer out. Now, statistically, you're up to a 33% chance if you guess. The default, we'd like to say the default relative ID is 1 because that's the starting or something. But that's interesting. There's an increment of 1, 500, 1,000. So do I steer on the left side of the road, the middle of the road, or the right side of the road? Well, I know when I drive, down the road, you like to stay in the middle. I guess 500 might be the best guess if I just had to do it. Only because there's an increment of 1, 500, 1,000. Specifically, that's it. Okay, and the default RID happens to be 500 for the administrative account. Okay, groups typically start at 1,000. Here's one of those command questions again. You see net use, server, IPC $. I remember we did that. That was the holy grail of hacking. I remember we couldn't do that on the new Windows servers because they're patched by default because they actually have that registry setting already set, restrict anonymous. So it's probably for an older operating system. Net use of the net command, so probably over a network. So you use some hidden share on another computer. The hidden share is IPC $, and then the / U, that looks like U for user, but no single quote, single quote. Well, there's nothing in the single quotes. Why isn't there anything there? I'm going to go with null session for 500, Alex. What are the most common ports used to identify Windows? Standard CEH style knowledge, right? Know your operating systems. Know how to identify common Linux systems, Solaris systems, web servers. Know all the ports you can possibly get down. You know, penetration testers, they like to play jukebox with ports. Who can guess the most ports and who knows what port what is? You want to play jukebox, find a pen tester and play the jukebox port. What port says what port that. Ask a firewall engineer too. They're really good at that as well. And they know lots and lots of random ports that normally people don't know. This is where people that have administrative day-to-day responsibilities, they suffer on test questions like this because they're going, oh man, what was that again? All right. So what are the common ports used to identify Windows? All right. So in this case, it's just easier for me to show you. I chose the last 3 of the range. You could have gone through these one at a time, but we're not going to. For simplicity of time's sake, I'm not going to play too many more games with you guys. I'll get you guys a little bit to the meat or the material that means a lot of stuff to you. All right, I think you guys are starting to get this at this point, following the thinking along with the exam. Okay, specifically, we just had a session designed to kind of walk you through the process. Now you're starting to see the process. Now we're going to start fast tracking. So we're going to switch gears again. Okay, for something like this, this is where know your subject matter would have worked. Okay, if you actually went over your ports and your protocols or your OSI model, you would know this stuff. Port 110. Anybody know what it is? It's POP 3. 140. Don't know off the top of my head. 25. Mail 3388, just random choice. I wanted it to look like 3389, which is an remote desktop port. 161 has to deal with simple network management protocol, and then 135 and 445 are common ports that you would be interested in. If you're doing one of our DNS labs, right? Well, we would go over all of the different DNS records. Now, in the actual hands-on lab, you actually can just go to the command prompt and look this stuff up. In a real exam, you bet, oh, man, I wish I would have paid attention to that, right? So this is where you got to go back to that. You may remember it in the hands-on lab, but what about 2 weeks from now? Are you going to remember it a month from now? Who on this call is going to remember this in a month from now, right? Is there such thing as an AA record or an AAA record? I dare you to go to NS Lookup and look. I dare you guys. What is RTP? Or maybe it's PTR. Or what is an SN versus an NS? Is the author trying to trick me? What's the odd man out here? Is it one versus the other? Why are these things similar? Why is AA and AAA? Is that a real thing or is that bogus? Why is SN and NS? Why are they related and close together? Why do I have SOA and AOS? Why are they related? Why is MX and XM? Why are they related? It's there for you to start finding grouping patterns, okay? Typically, let me clue you in on how to remember this type of stuff. Typically, the letter actually stands for something. I know at first you're like, oh, what was that again? Typically, the letter actually stands for something related to the conversation that we're having right now with DNS, all right? So, you know, A is actually a host record, or are you at home? Are you there? You're going to answer. It's an easy way to remember that. NS, name server. SOA, start of authority. MX, that's a mail server record, right? You can see the relationship between the command line switches, or in this case, the actual DNS records. But you can do this game with command line switches as well, right? When there's a test question coming up where I'll show you, okay? The following that are actually DNS records, right? Extending the test question way beyond what's typically done, you know, in test cramming versus realistically, how well did you know DNS? All right, that's where I was going with this one. How well do you truly know DNS? Okay. What is elite wrapped used for? Is it used to bind an overt and a covert program, or it's only used by really skillful administrators? There's absolutely no such program called elite wrap. Well, why couldn't there be? Or used to scan an IP. Well, it's actually used to bind an executable that's overt with a covert or hidden executable, or some sort of code or port dropper, or some sort of virus worm, Trojan, alternative data stream, or anything else you want to drop on the system. You just got to get the user to execute the overt. It's basically a Trojan tool. All right? Very easy to use, command line tool, Windows tool. If you haven't used Elite Wrap, very easy, walks you through the process. Definitely recommend doing that lab. How does LAN Manager store a password? Okay, so we're talking about hacking. We're talking about inside password files. There's different ways that you can store the hashes, or in some. This is where authors goof things up because not everything is stored as a hash just because you can't read it. It depends on the algorithm in play. Things like message digest versus DES here. This is integrity. If you use the 3-in-1 grouping strategy here, you have 3 integrities and then 1 confidentiality. In this case, MD 4, 5, and 6, it's integrity, and of course the DES. All right, but what algorithm? This is specifically related to LAN Manager. Well, what we can do is kind of go back in time here. And if you knew the order of things, you would go probably MD4, a little bit more to MD5, considering MD5 is what we use nowadays. But also go back in terms of confidentiality, DES. You had MD4 and DES really close back in the timeline of things. Well, LAN Manager is the old way that Windows used to store things. So you probably want to choose between something like MD4 and DES in this case. Specifically, what's it use? DES. Right? But there, NT LAN Manager versus LM, there are differences, and you should chart that stuff out. We'll go through and figure out the differences. Well, how does LAN Manager work? How does NT LAN Manager version 1 work? Version 2 work? Right? Go through it real quick. It's not that hard. Look it up. For LAN Manager hash, what does it mean when it ends in 404EE? It's encrypted with SSL. It's never going to be decrypted, probably because it's decrypted with SSL. The second half is null or the first half is null? No. Does anybody see the 50-50 here? A and B versus C and D. Okay? So if I can throw C and D out because of the word null, well, I would have lost points. All right? If I would have thrown encrypted SSL and decrypted and threw those two out, I would have kept my points on the board. All right? So, I don't know, cup half empty, cup half full, you tell me. In this case, if it ends in 404EE, it's probably the second half as opposed to the first half. If you guess the second half, 3 points for you. Using a file with common words is what type of password attack? Brute force, hybrid. I remember this stuff. When we did the cracking password, we could set up our password crackers to actually operate in different modes. When we did a dictionary, that's where we had to reference a file of knowns, and in that file of knowns, you could have things like the Arabic language, the English language, the Spanish language, all soccer terms, all World Cup terms, etc., etc., etc. Hybrid, that was a combination of dictionary and brute force. And then wireless. Wireless is isolated as an answer. That's probably the noise in this question. Final answer? Dictionary. Okay. How do you use Netcat in server mode? Well, I remember Netcat was in client mode and server mode. It was a 2-part lab. One acted as a client, one acted as a server. You had to actually open up the server-side component first and then connect to that listener. If you knew the content, if you actually did the hands-on, you were jumping out of your chair at this point going, I know the answer. But there's lots of creative answers here to try to trick you. Okay? Is it netcat? Is it listener? Is it server? Or the last answer? Well, we need to put it in server mode, which was listening. And then I better choose answers A or B, which is a matter of syntax. And I remember that we had to actually tell it what port to use. So check out netcat. By the way, netcat's the old way of doing things. You should check out some of the other new type of tools like SOCAT and things like that. Lots of, just search for Nmap alternative. I'm sorry, Nmap, NCAT alternative. And all right, if you wanted to Trojan the Windows login dialog box, what would you target? Gina, MS Gina, NW Gina, Lin Gina. Well, this is a Windows login dialog box, so Gina, I don't remember what that stands for, and guess what? Nor do I need to know that to actually answer the test questions. In this case, I'm just going to relate Windows to MS and MS Gina. Maybe that's the correct answer. Okay? If you don't know what a Gina is, you should look it up. This is a commonly targeted component of a Windows any operating system. Any login dialog box is basically what controls that. The login dialog box or the login process, that's the Gina. All right, and there's NW Gina for NetWare. There's Linux. There's generic versions and alternatives. You can name them whatever you want. msgina.sys or something like that. In Windows 8, what does the directory /R command do? It displays alternative data streams. It displays reboot statistic. Maybe R stands for reboot. It displays directories that begin with an R. It removes a directory. Actually, you should do this. It's a very, very simple lab to do. Go to the command prompt on any newer operating system, type directory /R. What you'll do is it'll show you the relationship with the alternative data streams. Very easy. Those are ones with all the squiggly lines next to them. What does the yes command do? It does whatever you tell it until you tell it to stop. Prints the words yes to null. Well, how would we do that? I don't know how to do the code to that on an operating system. I forget. I wasn't there that day. My dog ate my homework. Overwrites the SAM database. Well, what does the SAM database have to do with that? Why would it be overwriting it? Maybe I'll throw answer C out. Performs a session. Now that's networking computer to computer. What does that have to do with yes? I remember we typed yes, yes in the command prompt, and it just kept going and 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 going. So it must do whatever you tell it until you tell it to stop. All right? It basically can use to fill up a text file. Also can be a fun distributed denial of service attack tool if you just want to fill up a computer's file system. All right? What is the DD command used for? You guys should know this. This is a very sensitive command. Do not do this at work. Do not do this at home. You guys should always be operating ethically, legally, justly, and protecting the profession. So we don't go to our work PC and go, let me try this stuff, right? This is what we call a career limiting event if you do. The DD command is very, very direct. It does exactly what you tell it to do without forgiveness. You can easily make hard drive go bye-bye. Cool part is it basically looks at source and destination files. And everything is a file according to DD. And you can take a source, and you have a random source information, and you can write that to a hard drive, which ultimately becomes null. There is such a command, and it has nothing to do with the Duck Dynasty TV show. Although I have to say I am a fan. Performs all the recon for you. No, I don't know any tool that actually does that, so I'm going to throw that answer out as the absolute bogus answer. In this case, to manipulate files on your hard drive is absolutely correct. Right? And there's lots of syntax-specific stuff. You can Google DD examples, and you get the top dozen, or you can just do my lab. If you type notepad.exe, sumefile.txt, hidden.txt, what are you doing? Well, two of the answers are file system oriented, and then Trojan. I don't think that looks like Trojan code. I remember the syntax, the ADSs. I think there was that colon. I know it was something something. That was when we forked information from one file into another. Great for hiding viruses, trojans, worms, and then extracting them later on when you need them. Right. Creating an alternative data stream. Absolutely. So is sniffing a passive attack? I don't know. You guys tell me. If you are just listening only, read only to a network, I'd say that that's pretty passive to me. All right. What we demonstrate in the classroom is I normally get two people, go right up to one of the students in the front row, and I stand next to them and I say, "Ma'am or sir, am I bothering you?" And they say no. And then I put my finger on his or her shoulder and I say, "How about now?" And they immediately go, "Yes." Right? You can think of active versus passive the same exact way. Are you reaching out and touching your destination? If you are, you're active. If you're just passively doing something, you're eavesdropping, you're just listening, right? Kind of like a ninja. Right? What is a valid filter in Wireshark? This is purely syntax driven. Know the different filters in Wireshark. Things like, is the correct syntax and IP ADDR? This is where actually using the tool and doing autocomplete a few times, you would actually know all of these, like IP.src for source address or IP.dst for destination, or IP.addr, and then whatever your operator is. Operators come after this. So the correct answer here is going to be a big whopping IP.addr. Okay, and then you would have something like equal to like an IP address or a subnet or a range or whatever you're trying to match. What is the broadcast MAC address? Well, in here you can kind of use a little bit of a number game. All right. So what do you notice about the letters that I've chosen? Yes, two of them are at the end of the alphabet. The other two are at the beginning of the alphabet, right? Well, if we remember the MAC addresses are 0 through 9 and A through F, well, that doesn't go all the way through, so let's throw A and B out. There's your 50-50. Now, statistically, if you flip a coin and I just guess F at this point, all Fs, you'd have guessed correct. All right, it's the highest range, just like an IP address. The highest range is 255. In dotted decimal, 255 is the highest range. In a MAC address, all Fs are the highest range. So just knowing a little bit about the ports and the protocols and how they operate, free point. Which of the following, what is the following command illustrating in Ether 8? What type of attack? What did I type to create this output? This is where if you were using visual analysis tools, right, you can learn the behavior of different networks. Right? So your choices here, do you think MAC off, SMAC, MAC, or buffer overflow? You can probably, well, in this case, I think you can throw 3 out, but I guess I'm a little biased here. I wrote the question. Well, let's start with, shoot, there's so many ways you could twist this one. SMAC or SMAC. That's what we do to spoof MAC addresses. Well, if I'm spoofing it, I have to disconnect to the network, so I'm probably not getting a whole bunch of hosts in Ether 8. So let's throw SMAC out. By the way, if you did SMAC and SAM, those are host-oriented. I guess buffer overflow could be too. And then SAM security and account managers. What does this have anything to do with the password database? Nope, throw that out. Buffer overflow, am I looking at executable code? No, this is networking, shows network traffic and statistics. All right, this is a MAC off. It's a flooding utility. It's great to do this. You can illustrate this. But I have to warn you, very, very powerful utility. And don't do this on a production network. Absolutely not. Because you're basically going to disconnect yourself eventually. It floods 151,000 floods a minute. So it's very, very high, powerful stuff, folks. Okay. MAC off, correct answer. Let's try, why does a hacker want to do a session hijack? They got nothing better to do? They like to take over an already authenticated connection to distributed denial of service your boss. Probably not a good idea. to scan your destination URL. Well, hijacking a session, that means something's going on and I'm hijacking. Well, I know carjacking is taking over an existing car that's running, so if you said take over an already authenticated connection, good for you. Okay. What is the links browser used for? Well, it's an Internet Explorer plugin. For Chrome, both two answers A and B are plugin oriented. I can group those together. It's a read-only text web browser, or it's a cat. Sorry, I couldn't help there. It's actually a read-only text web browser. Are you guys starting to see the patterns, the 2 and the 1? In this case, if this was a 3-in-1 grouping, I'm going to throw cat out. Out of the remaining 3, I can still group the other 2 as plugins, so that quantifies I have to choose answer Charlie as the correct answer first. Okay? It's much easier to illustrate this with PowerPoint in the way that it is. Okay? Which of the following would this likely test? Okay, scripting. When did we do scripting in the class? What did we do? What were we doing? Script. It's probably web server, web client. Well, 2 of these answers I can kind of group together. DOS has to do with availability, but buffer overflow, I guess I could send something to that, but that's probably going to actually just overflow the memory buffers. I guess I could get a script to do that. How about cross-site scripting? No, cross-site scripting ends in scripts. Looks good to me. Cross-site scripting, final answer. Okay. What is the robots.txt file used for? It's actually TXT. This should show you which robots work for Facebook. Joke. To deny or permit indexing of spiders and crawlers. For malware buffer overflow. You're starting to see these patterns, folks. You got to look for the patterns in the answer. Can you separate malware from buffer overflow? Or Facebook as the bogus, here. Also, why is there something vendor specific or company specific? You should question that. Right? Final answer, to permit or deny indexing of spiders and crawlers. How do you test for SQL injection? What's the character? Who knows it? If you answer this test question from the content point of view, you just know it. It's jumping off of the screen. If you don't, you could basically look on your keyboard. Where are the single tick and the double tick located on your keyboard versus where are the asterisk and the $ located? This is a 50-50. At first you didn't see it. I know you don't have to be in the Mensa Club to figure this stuff out, right? You spend enough time on the hands-on on the labs, this stuff becomes second nature. Simply adding a single tick to the end of a string will cause a web server vulnerable SQL injection to typically error out and give you an error message or some sort of code. The more the merrier. All right? Final answer, it's highlighted, you can't see it, single tick. WEP uses what algorithm? All right? Well, this is where if you had the spreadsheet of symmetric and asymmetric algorithms, you would know this. All right? I've given that out before. If you guys contact the university and ask them for that, I'm sure they'll send me one nice big list with all of the requests of, hey, Leo, you said you would give this out. Please give this to everybody that you promised it to, but let's make the university's job a little bit easier. Everybody bombard them with phone calls and just get it over with. All right? Make their phone ring off the hook, say, I want Leo's stuff, I want Leo's stuff, I want Leo's stuff. I'll give you the spreadsheet with all of your symmetric and all your asymmetric algorithms. All right? Final answer, for those of you who know, RC4, which is a stream cipher. A couple of these answers are actually RC7. It's a little bit on the bogus side or unrealistic in terms of what we do on a day-to-day basis, so that was thrown in there for fun. And then RC5 and RC6 are block ciphers. SIDs are, look for the patterns, folks, the same as MAC addresses for wireless, transmitted in the clear text. The same as a BSS ID and the same as a CSS ID. Well, what's an SSID, a BSS ID, and a CSS ID? Remember, the SSID was the name of the access point. The BSS ID was the basic service set, which is the MAC address identifier of the access point or appliance. And CSS ID is, I just made that up. If there is such a thing, accident. Transmitted and clear, that's the answer. SSIDs are transmitting clear. That's why it makes no difference if you enable them or disable them. I could have thrown in enable and disable into this test question as well. Okay. Which of the following are not wireless hacking tools? Okay. Chop chop, east side, west side, and tone loc. What can you look? What tool could you look here if you had to guess a tool? All right. Think. Oh, this is the way to answer this question is to think. What domain is this test question coming from? When did I use the tool tone loc versus when did I use the tools chop chop, east side, and west side? All right. If you are hacking wireless, you probably use chop chop, east side, and west side. If you are hacking a phone system, you are probably using tone loc. Okay. All right, starting to get, you guys should just now be starting to get really, really warmed up here in terms of the repetition of the exercises, okay? It's learning and going through this once that makes it really, really important. You got to go through what I just went through. I'm basically walking you down a thinking path, okay? It's not so much. I know a lot of you are experts in the field, and my attempt is certainly not to talk down to you, but to slow you down. That's the point here. That's the objective. Not to get you bored, not to go, I already know the answer. You know, I should drop this conference call. I should go do something else. I should check my email again. I'm still talking to somebody else while I'm on the other line, right? You guys should be paying very, very detailed, very, very detailed. Right? I'm fixing your test-taking problems, right? That's why you guys, fact of the matter is, that's why everyone got on this call, to have their test-taking insecurities cured. All right, you guys got to slow down. You can go through a little bit more methodical through this. You don't have to rush and get scared and get the anxiety up and start throwing the dart at C. You're fooling yourselves at this point. Also, you can see how I discuss things through a hands-on example. I don't have any notes on this conference call whatsoever in terms of, like, I'm not looking up the procedures. I know them that well that I can just speak to them. If I can speak to them, I can dissect test questions. The best preparation that you possibly have for passing any exam in your life is being prepared and knowing what you're going to be tested on and what you're not going to be tested on. Knowing what works in the industry, what doesn't work in the industry. Notice that was an academic versus a professional answer. Right? All right, a couple more here, and then I'll let you guys go. Name an integrity-based intrusion detection application. Tripwire, AFT, Semantic, or Chrome? What's the patterns? You guys starting to see the patterns. Final answer? Tripwire. Actually one of the first, if not the first, application. You can still install this to this day if you want. That's how long it's been around. It's great to really, truly understand the subject matter of integrity. It's an host-based intrusion detection application. It profiles the system, and anything that changes, anything on that system, you would need to know how to run this tool. The reason why I know how to run this tool is because I have experience with it. When you work for people who constantly get attacked live, you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, I'm talking about the people that like to attack other people and be annoying. I can watch everything you do, anything you touch on my system. I have a very particular set of skills, and I will find you and track you down because I can monitor the integrity of the system. If any traffic comes to my computers, or any computer I'm responsible for, I can look at the integrity of that and see what's been changed and exactly when it's been changed, and by who in some cases. At least I can start building a profile. Very important integrity-based lesson in the application Tripwire. All right, another one. MSF console, MSF CLI, MSF web are all parts of what? Macaroni, Metasploit, exploit M3, or encoders decoders. Which one, if you had to pick one answer and throw it out, which one would you throw out? If you said encoder decoder, 3 points for you because your points are still on the board. If you also grouped this by A and B versus C and D because of the M's and because of the E's, again, this is the exercise that's important, well, then you could throw 2 answers out. And now you're down to a 50-50. So what do you think the tool is, Macaroni or Metasploit? If you had to do a 50-50 right now, you're probably at least a 50 to a 75%. If you're really sure you know what it is, you're at 75% or 100% confidence. Okay, and we would do these types of labs in the automation when we automate things and allow exploit frameworks like Metasploit to do the work for us. But you have to understand the theory. You got to understand what's going on in the background, and that makes Metasploit fun. You cannot brain dump your way out of Metasploit, I assure you. Okay, try. Don't believe me? Try. So what does the auto policy /disable do? Not too bad here. Auto policy /disable, it actually turns off auditing on a Windows system. So it disables the Windows auditing so that you can cover your tracks, do something, and then enable it once you've done doing whatever you want to do. Very, very simple. All right. What is a null operator? Very important. All right, now let's play a numbers game again. You think it's 0x90, px90, any fans? See how I sidetrack you there? How about 90-90 or 80-80, or what's your 10-20-40? Final answer, what's the only hex value there? 0x90. Okay? All right, everyone. I want to thank you so much for walking with me through this exercise. Again, let's summarize everything that just happened here. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Okay? Let's go right back to the beginning. Just 1 second. Think about the cone of learning for 1 second. Can you see the value? Maybe, hopefully, that I'm hoping that I brought value to the table here. If I don't bring value to the table, you're off the call. You're doing something else right now. All right. For most of you, though, there's still a lot of people left on the call. And actually, I don't think that many has actually dropped off looking at the numbers. I have to bring something to value here, or I can't hold your attention. If you follow along with me and you do things with me together and you follow things, we can go places. All right? You have to do things together in a group. It's fun to do these things over the conference call and the bridges, but doing them live is so much different. You can see how you can talk through these simulation of... Did you guys see how I did the simulation of real-world experiences? Maybe you saw a little bit of a dramatic presentation in there, right? Do you see how I have the ability to just give the talk on any particular subject? Because I've actually done this stuff. If I haven't done it, I don't talk about it. Yeah, one, because I have no idea, and I wouldn't know what I'm talking about, and I'd be bored, right? But at least I can still participate, right? You have to operate actively. You have to do this stuff. You can't study by yourself and try to memorize test questions and go pass exams. Doesn't work like that. You need to be of value to yourself and to the industry. That's why, especially at the university, in all of my experiences, it's one of the highest level of integrity and group of people that you can work with. All right, they believe in doing the right thing, and that's the important thing. You know, that's integrity. And you're more than welcome to get involved. You guys have to stop studying by yourself and trying to do this by yourself for whatever insecurity reasons you have, and then come have fun. Nobody's going to make fun of you because we've already laid the foundation. You know, I don't want to participate because I'm a bad test taker. Okay, we got over that. We got over that 2 hours ago now. Okay, we're over that. come on out. You can come out of the closet. Come hang out with us. Come play with us. Follow me, folks. All right. I want to thank you guys for taking the time, but you guys must act in the sense that do you want to get involved or do you not want to get involved? Okay? There's lots that's going on here. Right? If you need things like, understanding how to use Cali in your professional career, your mind maps, because you need to, understand the material. Maybe you just want to look for things and actually find what you actually want to find on the internet, and you just want some Google hacking command experience. I mean, I don't know. If you're still on the call, clearly everybody can be helped, but now's the point where you guys are done listening. Now's the point where you have to act. All right, so connect with us. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Reach out. There's plenty. You should be able to use your ethical hacking skills and find us. Notice I never gave my phone number, email, or anything else. Go find it, folks. Okay, you guys can do this on your own. Call the university. I'm not giving you their number. Go find it. You guys are ethical hackers now. You have to think like an ethical hacker. Be positive, stay true, connect, share, and learn from each other. And thank you, everyone, for being on the call. I'll turn it back over to you guys.